So you might be wondering, how did it go for me? The transition between going from a programmer to a business owner slash entrepreneur, how did it happen for me? For me, it was actually difficult. When I was even in college, I was dabbling with my own business ideas, but my own business ideas were not good businesses. It's just my own ideas for projects that I thought were going to be good, but ultimately were not. So I was always like on my own time, I was always kind of, it was bugging me because, and maybe you have the same experience. Like, I was like, I have this idea, don't know if it's good, but I really want to make it. And like, as soon as it like bugs you more, then it's fun to be lazy and not do it, then you end up doing the idea. It just, your curiosity has to bug you just enough, and then you start working on your idea and seeing what happens. So I didn't get many mentors, and I made a lot of mistakes. And what happened in my case was I was always working on the side, weekends. When I started, that's during the college days, and then like when I started working, I was literally some days I would program on my own ideas. I would work on them on when I would wake up, before work, on the bus to work, even after work, on the weekends, and I would just be really driven by my own ideas and wanted to launch them and see how they do. And usually they did really bad. I mean, sometimes they like miss, you don't know how to promote them, and when building it, to be honest, it's hard enough to build it, and all the focus is on building it, any idea, and it's so hard to do that when people ask you, well, how are you going to promote it? That sort of, for me at least, it got kind of, shoved away, and I'll be like, I'll take care of that when it's time. I'll tackle that when it's time. But then what used to happen almost always is I didn't know how to promote it when it was time, and I never really promoted things well. So what started happening is I started learning one by one. I was like, well, if I really need to pre-plan the marketing, because that killed my previous idea. And then I really need to make sure that it's easy to implement and launch, because that killed another previous idea. And all these hard lessons that I had to learn, eventually, years later, I was able to start being successful at things I launched. Now, if I'm honest, obviously I have so much more experience now and I know so much more, but if I'm still honest, little things that I launch, they're not all super successful. They're just more likely to be successful. And the more you work on them over time, the persistence, that really makes or breaks that idea, because it's very rare from launch to be super successful. So that, for me, it was multiple failures. And then after the failures, I kind of had a few, I guess, lukewarm successes, things that just made a little bit of money but didn't have, like, there's no way to really grow them. And so I'm like, okay, I got to think ahead of like, so that something that I build next is not just a lukewarm thing, but it really has potential, and so on and so on and so on. And just these hard lessons accumulated, and over time I started building. And inside the hard lessons, there'll always be like little lessons. Of course, when you're taking courses like this, the whole idea is that it expedites your process, lessens your mistakes, makes sure you make fewer mistakes, and makes your process less frustrating, less painful. But for me, it did take time. And the transition between working, which gave me a good salary, and then all the self-doubt that happened when I quit the job and I was like, okay, I'm on my own, but the situation was stressful and all this. So what happened was I started taking like shorter term contracts, certain shorter term jobs. And it's not like that's a perfect solution, because those have their own problems. You still have to look for them. That takes time. Sometimes the clients, they're like, smaller clients, and their businesses die, and then you waste all that time selling to them. So that was a problem. I think today that's much easier to solve, because the freelancing sites are more established. When I was doing this, they weren't. And so, one after another, essentially, it was a process. I guess what I'm really trying to say is that it's a process, and all of us always want for that process to go faster and smoother. But for each of us, it has its own cadence and speed, and it's sometimes longer and more painful than we want. And my job is to minimize it for you, but also, set your expectations. I mean, sometimes it does take a while for you to become business savvy enough, or to have improved your product enough, and to figure out how to promote it, figure out how to monetize all that stuff. So it's for the lucky ones, it takes under a year, maybe under 6 months, their first business does well. But I think those are really not the common cases. The common cases is a longer term struggle, mediocre successes, bigger successes that you build on top of that. That's the real story that maybe you don't hear out there because you only hear of the success stories. But that's the real story that's what is probably the likeliest to expect for you. And once you expect it, it's not as bad because you knew it's coming.